We're about to dive into one of the most fascinating and honestly tragic stories in the history of any game. It's a story about a genius who reached the absolute summit of his craft, a man so far ahead of his time, it just seemed like magic. Think about this. In the span of just 2 years, he traveled across continents and just dismantled every single master who dared to face him. He became the undisputed, unofficial champion of the entire planet. And then, right at the absolute peak of his fame and power, he just stopped. Poof. Gone. Never to play a serious game again. So, who was this guy? This is the great mystery of Paul Morphy. He was the first real chess superstar, a man whose brilliance burned brighter than anyone before him, only to vanish just as quickly. So what really led to this incredible rise and this sudden, shocking disappearance? Okay, so to really get Morphy, you've got to picture the world he was born into. He was from New Orleans, born in 1837, and he was stepping into a chess scene that played a fundamentally different game than the one he had cooking in his mind. The chess of the 1850s was known as romantic. It was all about these gallant, swashbuckling attacks, but it was often slow, kind of uncoordinated. Morphy, on the other hand, was playing a modern, lightning-fast game. Seriously, he wasn't just another player. He was like a time traveler from the future of chess. So what was his secret sauce? It all came down to this idea of aggressive development. While his opponents were slowly, poking around with one or two pieces, Morphy was getting his entire army into the fight right away. He understood that speed and coordination were everything. Every single move had a purpose, building this tidal wave of pressure that would just overwhelm his rivals before they even knew what hit them. And get this exact principle is the literal foundation of how top-level grandmasters play chess today. By the time he was just 20 years old, this revolutionary style had made him basically untouchable in America. He completely crushed the competition at the first American Chess Congress. He had literally run out of worthy opponents. To find a real challenge, he had to cross the ocean. And so, he set his sights on Europe, the undisputed heart of the chess world. And let me tell you, this wasn't just some friendly trip. This was an invasion. He was going to the home of the masters to prove that his new way of playing was just flat out better. When he got to Europe, he was ready to take on everybody. The English champion, a guy named Howard Staunton, famously found every excuse in the book to avoid playing him. But in Paris, Morphy just took the continental masters apart, piece by piece. The absolute peak of this tour was his legendary blindfold exhibition. He played 8 strong players at the same time, without seeing any of the boards. Just imagine that. He kept all 256 squares and every piece's position for all 8 games perfectly in his head. That's not just talent, that's something else entirely. So yeah, it's no surprise the European press just called him a wizard. I mean, what else could you say? They couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. To them, his ability wasn't just skill, it felt supernatural. He had conquered the old world. But funny enough, maybe the single greatest display of his genius didn't happen in some quiet tournament hall. It happened in a private box during a night at the opera. This game is now legendary. It's just called the opera game. So picture this. Morphy's in Paris. He's just trying to enjoy a performance of the opera norma. 2 aristocrats, the Duke of Brunswick and Count Isouard, insisted on playing him right then and there. Annoyed, distracted, Morphy basically decided to teach them a lesson in chess they would never, ever forget. And this is where his genius became immortal. The final attack is just a cascade of violence and beauty. First, he sacrifices a knight, not as a mistake, but to tear open their defenses. Then he gives up a bishop just to pour on the pressure. And finally, in a move that must have looked like pure madness, he sacrifices his most powerful piece, the queen, all for one single purpose: to set up a perfect, inescapable checkmate. The game was over in just 17 moves. It was a perfect symphony of his aggressive philosophy. He came back from Europe the undisputed king of chess, a national hero. And this is right where the story takes its tragic turn. His greatest triumph would lead directly to his greatest sorrow. He was just 22 years old. At an age when most people are just starting their careers, Paul Morphy returned to America, stood before an adoring public, and announced his complete retirement from serious chess. To understand why, you have to get inside his head. To Morphy, chess was a wonderful pastime, an art form, but it wasn't a respectable profession for a gentleman. His real ambition was to be a lawyer. But his chess fame became a cage. Nobody would take him seriously in the courtroom. He would always be Morphy, the chess player. In his frustration, he issued this incredible challenge. He was so far beyond everyone else that he offered to give any player in the world a head start, the equivalent of a massive handicap, and he knew he would still win. You know who accepted? Nobody. The world of chess had no answer for him. His law career never took off. Unfulfilled and bitter that the world only valued him for the one thing he wished to leave behind, he just withdrew from society. The brilliant mind that could see dozens of moves ahead became clouded, and he spent his remaining decades in seclusion, passing away a tragic figure at only 47. So how do we remember a figure like Paul Morphy? Well, his legacy is captured perfectly by the title he was given after his death. Just look at how incredibly compressed his entire international career was. We're talking about 1857 to 1859. In just over 2 years, he arrived, he conquered, and he left. It was a brief, blinding flash of pure genius, like a comet streaking across the sky. And this is what they called him, the pride and sorrow of chess. The pride for the incredible beauty and power he brought to the game, showing the world what was possible. And the sorrow for that brilliant light that was extinguished far, far too soon, and the tragedy of a man who could never reconcile his genius with his ambitions. And that's really the question Morphy's life leaves us with. He was a modern man in a pre-modern world, a professional talent in an amateur era. His story serves as a timeless, haunting reminder of the immense cost that can sometimes come with being too far ahead of your time.